can tuck my batting in, and I have a long piece of batting. I know it's way too long, but I'll be able to cut it right off, and I won't have to pre-cut it. This way I can cut it off with the quilt, and I won't have any waste. I'm like you, probably, trying to conserve as much as I can and reuse things. And so there, I'm very happy with that. Now I'm going to run a reference line using my machine with a channel lock and run a stitching line across so I have a nice straight line so I can bring my top up to that line. So I'll bring my machine over. I'm going to go down and bring my thread up. You always need to bring your bobbin thread to the top, always. A good long arm quilter will handle all of the threads from the top. So then I can put my channel lock on and go across. Can stop and pull those over and cut my threads. You can see how handy those scissors are just to wear them like that. Now I can move the machine back a little bit. My top is already loaded and ready for me to bring up. And here's my center of my quilt, and I'll bring that right up to that line that I just stitched. And then I just put a few pins, making sure that that top of the quilt is right up to the reference line that I just stitched. But I don't want the pins to be in the way, so I make sure that the pins are below that line, and that holds it to make sure I am going to be very straight. And one more down here as I start. And this will be attaching the top of the quilt to the lining and the batting. And you make sure that you do not stitch anything but like 1/8 of an inch down from that top. If you stitch 1/4 of an inch or more from that top, then you're going to be in trouble when you go to bind the quilt. So you need to keep that really close to the top of the quilt. Also, if you're doing a pantograph or cross-hatching or any of the designs that you might want to do on the quilt, you may be going on and off the edge of the quilt, and you don't want that little extra seam allowance to flip down on you as you're doing that. Now I can take my pins out, and I'll tighten up my top, make sure everything's nice and smooth. The other thing I'm going to do is stitch down the left side. This is in the front of the machine here where the handles are, or the horns, and I'm going to stitch down on the left side only as far as I can go. This is as far as my machine will go until I move my quilt back. And on the right side, I'm going to just baste this side. Sometimes if I stitch this side, which I don't because I've learned not to, but if you do, oftentimes you will get a bubble when you get over to this side and you're stitching it. So I just baste this side, just this one stitch at a time, like this. You could also pin it. There we go. And now I'm ready to put my clamps on. We didn't have clamps on until now. So the clamps are really to hold the quilt in place as we're quilting. So I'll put my clamps on. Both sides. And you can see I only need to have the clamp to the edge of the lining and the batting. Okay, I have a little bit more batting than lining, so I can actually just pull that around if I want to, or just clamp it like that. Make sure you never, never push your batting underneath and clamp it. there's a real possibility that you could stitch your batting underneath the quilt. It happens all the time. So if you have extra batting, you can cut it off, or just make sure that that clamp goes up like that. It's not going to affect the quilt at all, so that you can see where the edge of that batting is, so that you are not going to stitch it. And now I'm ready to stitch this quilt and show you what a cute thing I'm going to do on it.